Well, hello, Jacob Darlene with the Risk Performance Podcast. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about mindfulness, and the guest is Linda Bjork, fellow Swede. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's so good to be here, Jacob. I'm
Well, we're going to talk.
delighted.
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to talk about mindfulness, safety, efficiency, safety intelligence today. But why don't we start? Because we could go in so many directions. And why don't we start with who is Linda Bjork and where did you come from?
Well, here in America, I'm Linda Bjork.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, it's really Björk, and it means birch tree. But yeah, I've been in the US for a long time. So I'm on my 25th, 26th year or something like that. No, I'm actually going on 30 years. What am I even talking about? Time flies. And I have always had a big connection with the US because my dad always lived here. And so, yeah, brief background. I was always in the branding industry and worked my way up very quickly, creative director, corporate America, et cetera. And then I took over as the CEO of a Swedish branding agency, and I spent 10 years making that global. So, super awesome journey of leadership and high performance, creativity, and all of that good jazz. Leadership has always been a big thing for me. And we're sort of segueing over into the safety part of it,
Yep.
seeing that I just came up with the book on safety. And my dad was he from the early 70s, he was the president and CEO of Skanska USA, and is sort of known to build that to the huge thing it is today. And then he took over as a global CEO, Klaus Björk. And so I grew up with construction, heavy industry leadership, and so I've done a lot of observations. And I had a I realized the other day that this is such a full circle moment for me because even though I've been into leadership and high performance, I have also worked a lot with heavy industry with my mindfulness intelligence and another type of awareness in the work site, on the job sites. And now it's 35 years ago that I went to engineering school in Sweden, and my classmate's brother worked on a construction site. He was only 18 years old and stood in a puddle of water while touching electricity and was electrified and died on the spot.
Mm.
Electrocuted, it's called electrocuted. Um, and it had such a profound impact on me to see this up close and personal. That was a lost life. That was an actual life that was lost because of course, lack of training, but also lack of awareness.
Yeah.
And if you look at the safety, we're going to talk so much about safety and heavy industry and why that is such an important topic today. But although I normally work more with different types of leaderships. I work with generals in the U.S. Army. I work with fashion designers in New York City. I work so leadership is sort of, and being really really good at what you're doing, that goes across any industry. And now I happen to dip not only my toe but a big foot into the safety world, and it is fascinating. It is an outrage that we are not using our human capacity more to prevent a lot of these incidents, accidents, and fatalities from happening. So yeah, that's a quick background on why we're
Yeah.
sitting here.
Well, and of course we're both Swedish, and that's kind of how we got connected with different common interests. And my background is I work with a lot of those companies that we work with the same type of clients and interactions with heavy industry as well. So but talk about, so of course you send me a preview. I'm gonna let me show you what I have in front of you, in front of me. Let me find the front page because this is the first time that I. So let's see if this shows up. I'm gonna put it in front of me because I have a blurred background. Is your book? I got a advanced copy in PDF format.
You did.
So I've
And I got my author copy the other day.
oh
So there it is.
all right, within color. Mine is, but it's really a book about safety. But and you've written several books in
I have.
within mine, with intelligence and mindfulness. But so what made you write this book?
It's frustrating to me when I have certain clients and it's so glaringly obvious to me because I know what kind of results that not only I can make happen, but this type of work can make happen. And they still sit there and are not really willing to step into the realm of focusing on the human capacity for safety. And so it's not that I wrote the book out of spite, but I was a little tired of the heavy industry completely like they're with me. I present the stats. They're yes, yes, yes. And they're like, well, we have a macho culture, so I'm not sure, maybe later. And I'm like, yeah, but maybe later you're going to have so many more deaths on hand, in accidents, my and here's a part of this that I didn't realize before I wrote the book. A friend of mine is the regional manager of methadone clinics.
Hmm.
It's a world I know very little about. I sort of haven't had addiction very close to me in my life thus far, and so I was kind of curious about, well, what is your clientele at methadone clinics? And I was kind of thinking, homeless people, whatever. Um, no, professionals, mostly. You'd be surprised how proper everybody is coming in there to try to wean them off of their addictions to heavy drugs and pain medication. And then she said, the biggest part of my clientele as a cohesive group are construction workers.
Mm.
I'm like, what? Wait a minute. This is my area. What are we talking about? Something I had completely missed. And when she said it, it all makes sense, right? Because of all of these, it doesn't look bad on the stats. I got injured. But that means they got injured, they were put on pain medications, and then the doctor says no more pain medication for you.
Yeah.
And then there could be socioeconomic factors that make them actually have another provider at hand, where they get their pain medication, and then they are onto addiction.
Yeah.
And I was just because of these back injuries and all of what they have. And that to me is fascinating. Once you start looking at the carnage from not taking care of the humans, doing this heavy lifting, high risk, I just said, no, 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 no. I have too much knowledge about this and I can do too much about it that it's my darn duty to do it. So
Yeah.
here I am.
Well, and so it prompted me to have, all right, when you sent it to me and I said, well, let's record a podcast because what I deal with is really the more, with safety is a part of what we do, but it's really talking about risk and risk performance mainly. And I've been in this business for more than 25 years and work for an insurance broker, and we have clients that are, deal with risk all the time. So what I thought we'd do is talk about, of course, we're going to be talking about the mindfulness and then what is it and what effect does it have? And then we're going to go into the details within, SAFE, which is what your book is really an acronym for SAFE. And we're going to talk about what those things are, and what you can do, some practical, some applicable things. And then we'll go into kind of how you normally help companies out there as well. But let's talk about, I deal with risk performance. I deal with risk, which risk, of course, is the probability of something bad happening or an adverse event. Performance, so why talk about risk and what's the difference between safety? Safety is really Um, it's really free of risk is one of the definitions. And there's nothing that we do that is free of risk. There's risk in everything that we do. So what we deal with our clients is really helping our clients or people, organizations to perform in the risk. And we always say that it's opportunity and risk. So it's simple. A simple way to perform well in the risk is just reduce your risk. But what's the joy in that, right? So, or take the methadone clinic. You could say, well, because there certainly is a lot of risk involved in what they do. Medication management, really, it's highly regulated. And if you don't do it well, if you don't perform well within that risk, then it can be very risky, right?
Of
So,
course, yeah.
so risk performance is really about performing in the risk, and that brings in this other concept. It's really something that, I'm a big believer in, kind of Todd Conklin and human organizational performance, dealing with risk versus defenses. Because safety is not the absence of the accident, but really the presence of defenses, or risk performance is really the presence of defenses. So, what are defenses? Defenses are really actions, things that we do strategically, deliberately, proactively against the risk. So, if you are in a business that is high risk and your defenses, the things that we do, if those are weak, and weak, you mentioned kind of the word efficiency earlier. They can be effective, meaning they get the job done, but they're highly inefficient. Well, that's not good because we only have so much time and resources. So you want to have defenses that are efficient and effective. So if the risk is high and your defenses are weak, then you are permeable to the risk or the adverse effect, the adverse effect, which could be a loss. So the greater the delta between the risk and your defenses, the higher the probability of a loss. So you have companies that choose to do something risky. If the risk is high, what is in your control is really to balance your risk and your defenses. So let's not focus on reducing our risk, but let's focus on improving our defenses. Now, it's kind of the same thing as the athlete, right? What they're in, and there's a lot of correlations between the business athlete and the athletic athlete. What they focus on so much in their strategy to become a better athlete is improving their skill and work on that skill. If you're a golfer, you're going to hit a lot of golf balls, or work on their body. They're going to improve and they're going to get stronger, faster, better in that sense. But what made me attracted to our conversation today is really the mindfulness. What about the brain? What about how we think and those type of things? So that's one I want to have it in here, have you on as a guest. One of the things you mentioned if you go to your LinkedIn page, is that you write this: in heavy industries, there's a well-known but often ignored truth. The human factor accounts for most workplace accidents, with 80% due to people experiencing stress. So we talked about the human factor or human error, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk about that a little bit because humans err. Humans are
They do.
fallible.
Yeah, yeah. And thank you for that. And the S in SAFE is for stress resilience. And there's a whole host of things that happens when we are stressed. Another word for stress is fear. And so the whole fear mechanism that we have within us, we have an automated system that gets turned on when we feel fear. And this fear and this system is very much so turned on in heavy industry and high risk industries, not just because we can get scared because we know we're going into danger. It's also because the only two fears that we are actually born with as human beings is the fear of heights and the fear of loud noises. And we are on a job site especially in high risk heavy industry, it's noisy as hell. And you have a lot of scary falls that can be in front of you and near falls. And so your nervous system is really jacked up with a fear response 24/7. And the reason I say not just when you're working is that when you are used to being hopped up on fear, which most dudes in heavy industry wouldn't say that they're scared, but
Yeah.
no, I don't feel fear. I'm fearless. But just as a system, yes, you are. And that system is used to and becomes addicted to stress. So when we stress, there's actually a chemical cocktail that goes out into our system, and that is perceived by the brain as addictive as heroin and morphine. So we want the stress after we've been very stressed out. That's why we can't relax. I have had several safety leaders in different industries say to me, I had to jump off. I couldn't stand the stress because it wasn't just when I was on a job. It was every night, every weekend. I couldn't sleep. A lot of so what happens is bit by bit, you're losing these natural abilities that the body has to calm down. You can be in high performance, and athletes know this. You can
Mhm.
be in high performance um, on a really high level if you rest between your high performances.
Yeah.
So the resting part is a big part of my job, and that's why the stress part of it is an important regulation that at this point in our lives and in this point in time, we have to practice. It's not going to happen automatically. So our natural inclinations will actually make us a bigger risk.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So let's bring this into like it's kind of like the so what part of the of this equation. If you're a
Mhm.
business owner here, certainly not you don't want to have accidents, right? There's this
Right.
moral and ethical side of I care about my family and the teammates that we have and certainly we don't want to have that.
Mhm.
But there's also a financial, I mean, most of the companies that I work with directly or indirectly gets financially affected by workplace accidents, both on the let's call it the workers' comp end, the general
Sure.
liability end, meaning
Mhm.
hurting others.
Mhm.
The workers' comp is going to be to your employees or damage to equipment or property to others, right? So the risk and the financial risk of performing poorly versus the performing really, really well, there's a huge financial benefit to this, right?
Yeah.
So the companies that I work with, they have a desire to want to get better. But we talked a little bit offline about, the safety industrial complex problem of in the last 10, 20 years, what has happened, if you look at kind of safety and the evolution of safety in the industry,
Mhm.
workplace accidents, has changed a lot since the coal mining days or the logging business of, you know, where accident rates were drastically improving over time. But then what's happened in the last, I would say maybe 20 last, and it's really, we have this regulatory side, OSHA that comes in and says, or MSHA if you're in mining or depending on what business you're in, but can you regulate out losses? And the answer is no. In the last 10, 20 years, what has happened to accident rates is that they've basically plateaued.
Yes.
But we've introduced more and more legislation.
Yeah.
And what we find is that, okay, you can write all the policies and procedures and you can have rules in there. And we've actually seen an uptick in fatality rates uh, is not gone down. It's actually gone up a little bit. So
Mhm.
a lot of business owners are frustrated with and you go, Skanska is a great example. Global company. If you work for Skanska as a subcontractor, you you got to jump through lots and lots of hoops, but they still have fatalities,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And they're certainly better than they have been, but they're still happening because of the human error that is happening. We are flying planes all over the country, and sometimes plane crashes. We are doing it's hugely big in the medical side of human error with surgical errors.
Hmm.
How in the world can you leave an instrument
Yeah.
inside of a human body, right?
And sew it up.
And you sew it up. I mean,
It's so absurd.
error happens all the time. So
Yeah.
if you listen to Conklin, what he'll tell you is that most error is system induced. So system induced meaning, and this is where we put um, we put an employee in a situation where it's highly complex, highly stressful, with not a lot of training, and we expect them to perform at a very high level, fault free.
Yeah.
And then when they make the error, we name, blame, shame, and retrain the employee, or we may fire the employee
Yeah. If they're still alive. Sure. Yeah.
if they're still alive.
Yeah. No, but that's how absurd this gets. And I love that you're bringing that up because we all know that Einstein and many other smart people have said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, right? And so we've been doing the PPT and I mean PPE, the protection, the personal protection
Yeah.
equipment. We've been doing the different regulations like you're talking about. We've been doing the ergonomic improvements. We've been doing the whole list of what we have done, which worked in the beginning, from the 70s and down to the
To a
the
certain
early
degree.
2000s.
To a certain degree, is improved.
Yeah, it's definitely improved, but it cannot do the whole pie.
Yeah.
And so part of the pie that for some reason heavy industry, except smart and progressively um, out there people who actually can see this and buy this, and what they see is that not so difficult here with the math. 80% of accidents, incidents, and fatalities are from people who are stressed out, and here's a solution where we can bring down stress 80%. Yeah, I think I'll take that.
Yeah.
It's like, why would that even be hard? And here's another stat. This is why I think there's been an uptick since the huge avalanche of bringing a smartphone and such to the workplace. Did you know that research shows in the United States that workers spent 2.5 hours of the workday actually on their smartphones for personal use, non-work related use, 2.5 hours per day. I mean, you can go past a lot of different construction sites, even police officers. I'm not going to fault them because maybe it's work related, but research will tell us that that's why I, in my book, call technology a double-edged sword. I love technology. I'm a tech nerd, always have been, always will be. Love AI. I love the wearables. I love all these things. Not a lot of workers love the wearables because you can do a lot of tracking of people with the wearables, and they're like, no, thank you. So you're not going to penetrate that easily with technology, even though there are technological advancements that are awesome for the whole safety pie. However, it also makes us duller to our natural instincts and to our natural awareness of our environment. The A in my book, safety or safe, is for awareness. And it's both self-awareness, knowing yourself, knowing your limitations.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for the tough guys to say, this is actually beyond my scope of knowledge. I can't do this. So we have the self-awareness, but we also have relational awareness, how we interact with other people. And then, of course, we have situational awareness. And I got to tell you, because I've been in heavy industry my whole life, it is extraordinary what the situational awareness, how many times that have saved lives from near fatal accidents. And also, of course, the reverse.
Yeah. So what you're saying here, and you're a proponent of in the platform that you have, is really if you are, and I'll give you a little my thoughts on why it hasn't happened yet, but really is if you mentioned kind of progressive companies and forward-thinking companies that are incorporating these things in the strategy. Again, go back to the defenses and the risk. So if you are not incorporating mindfulness and the components of mindfulness, which we'll go into more in detail in a moment, if you're incorporating that into your strategy proactively, deliberately, and strategically, then you're improving or you're making your defenses more efficient, right? If you don't factor these things in, you are relying on old-fashioned techniques that makes you still vulnerable.
Oh, absolutely. And the plateau is going to be stubbornly there, and you're
Yeah.
probably going to see an increase.
Yeah.
Yep.
Here's why I think it's not so why do we pull our hair out and say why aren't more people factoring this in? And most, if you look at most, and I worked in kind of safety and health since college. That was actually my degree back in a long time ago. Um, Most safety professionals uh, come from the compliance world, or they live in this world of this is what we do. We train people, we write policies, and then we may do toolbox meetings and observations and these type of things, but we and is getting a little bit more now into the human body, physiological
Hmm.
defenses, right? Stretching. We realize that a lot of accidents are musculoskeletal in nature, and we are, especially when we're dealing with heavy stress physically, right? So
Hmm.
what do we do with the physical body is we are, oh man, if we warm up and stretch, oh, wait a minute, we need to make sure that we're matching the work to the physical body so you have physical capabilities, right?
Yep.
Important because risk goes up if you have an incompatible job with the worker, or you have someone that is predisposed with they're overweight with a bad back and low hamstring strength, as an example.
And
And
isn't
what we
it crazy how common slip and fall accidents are?
and strains. So what we see when we're dealing with clients and we look at their loss history, I don't need to give a loss analysis on where their losses are coming from. Their top dollar spend is going to be on strains and sprains to knees, shoulders, and backs. And the second one is going to be, and even more frequent, is going to be slip, trip, and fall from the whether it's wet surfaces, tripping over stuff. But the issue is, what's the difference when you have a 25-year-old person versus a 55-year-old person? When they fall, the damage often is vastly different.
Oh, absolutely.
Or the damage when you have someone with a bad back falling, now you have a $150,000 shoulder injury on your hand versus the limber cat that fell, so to speak. So when we go in, let's go into the different components, SAFE. So stress, awareness, flexibility, and then the last one kind of deals with the executive function.
Hmm.
But so stress. So when we have people that are under stress, we talked about it a little bit already. You have a chemical imbalance or you have chemical issues that you deal with. But so uh, and you mentioned kind of the propensity for mental health problems, and I know statistically there's a lot of people in the safety world that they leave, they can't take it, but
That's
so
right.
long they can't stay in this job because of the stress that they're in. But
Yeah.
if we're just talking about the worker
Mhm.
in a high hazard environment, you have the there's a high risk of complacency as well. If I am take the construction worker on the highway and you got people zooming by all the time and you get kind of complacent to the risk that is 12 inches away,
Yeah, that's
right?
right.
Or you have the risk of the un the task that is not a common task. So the
Mm.
things that they're not used to. Two different risks. But if you're stressed, so working long hours, right? Physically demanding
Yeah.
becomes then harder to manage when I'm physically tired or I am mentally. You can only be on for so long,
It's
right?
true. And we don't live our lives compartmentalized. So you can have an argument with your spouse. You might be going through a divorce. You might have financial burdens that are too heavy. And then you get a third thing, and the whole house of cards collapses because it's just too much. The compounded effect of what you are dealing with in your life.
Yes.
Because you bringing you wherever you go, there you are, as the famous mindfulness book is called.
Yeah.
So there you are with all the stresses that not necessarily have to be the biggest pie doesn't have piece of the pie doesn't have to come from work, but in heavy industry it's a huge weight that comes from work when it comes to stressing your physical, mental, and psychological and even spiritual system.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And the
you're going to be
impact,
very stressed. Yeah.
you can have impacts on both. Your work can have an impact on your family life. Your family life can have an impact at work. So
Oh yeah.
but if you just look at it from the business owner's perspective,
Yes.
or the safety
That's
professional that may
uh-huh.
be listening to this and say, okay, I'm interested in this, and so can I manage this? Can I do something about it? I want to do something about it, but can I do it? Or maybe what can I do?
Yeah. So there are two things that make someone actually change their behavior. One is to have insight that they need to change, and the other one is to practice to make the change actually part of your own system. And so in the programs that I offer, I work with the whole project team, and I call them the office folks. The ones that are actually they go to the office. So it could be anywhere from the project director and different types of managers and all the way out to four persons.
Yeah.
And so that is one, this is the leadership team of it and what they can do. And listen, here's what happens. We're making I was going to say a bajillion, but of course we don't. But we make, let's say, hundreds of decisions every day. And we make decisions about what we're going to be speaking about, what kind of materials we're going to have, everything. We make decisions about how we show up. We make all of these decisions. And here's the thing about stress. And this goes for, I know, for all safety leaders, but it goes for most, especially middle managers. I mean, my heart goes out to middle managers because they are squeezed from both ends in a way that is highly stressful. And at the very tippity top, there's a little bit more space, right? And they do get other types of education into their reality. Whereas here in the middle, when we're talking about stress, what's important to know is that there are immediate and long-term changes that happens to your brain and your capacity to think when you're stressed out. So again, stress means fear, the fear system turns on, and not only does so you sort of have a command center, like this is the center of the brain telling the rest of the brain what to do kind of thing. And what we want to have happen to make good decisions is for our prefrontal cortex, the very front, the new part of our brain, to make the decisions and tell all the different pieces of the brain what to do, right? That's a well-functioning brain. Bad news. When we stress out, the command center moves from the prefrontal, very sophisticated, intellectual, creative, context-driven, awesome brain, the crown jewel of our existence, right? The command center is no longer there. It moves back to our fight. This is what fight, flight, freeze, fawn is about. It's our amygdala making the decisions. The command center is moved to the hind part of the brain, our very old brain that takes over when we're threatened, and can't even reach with signals to our cortical brain and to our prefrontal cortex, which
You
means
kind of have
that,
a paralyzing of
yeah, of your smarts.
disability, so then you go
Yeah.
back to what always works.
What always works and what is
But it has limitations, right?
it has huge limitations because there's no sophistication. And I know that people think that they're logical first, but we're actually survival first and then we're emotional. And so this is where we can become very agitated, pissed off. You know, a lot of anger comes with being stressed out. And a lot of us feel that we're not really our best selves when we're stressed out. Like we say things and we show up and we're like, yikes, that wasn't really so cool, right? So stress is really, it's a huge line item in your spreadsheet for the budget, and it should be taken care of. And for some reason, it's not, and it just has to change.
So if you're a middle manager, understanding that this is there's a delta in here, an opportunity to manage this well. And
Yeah.
if you but I imagine that a lot of middle managers aren't even aware that this is something that is actionable. It's something that should be part of
Well,
the ability.
when they read my book, they're
Which is
gonna
what
know.
so you put in the book here, you're talking about self-awareness, relational awareness, and situational awareness.
Mhm.
So what you really want to do is make that, if you can elevate the level of competency of that middle manager and understanding that different people react to stress differently, and you can also pre-plan this in, just like you do with stretching for the physical body. If you want to pre-plan in, uh so I put in here, I put in some words in here about limitations, capacity, capability
Mhm.
versus the competing interests that are also prevalent. Macho culture. Um, oh yeah, I can do this. You get thrown into something, it's sink or swim, and this, oh, that's the way I learned. Well, in reality, it's a poor way of managing people
Yeah, and it doesn't work
because
anymore. It's
well,
like,
and the likelihood, the risk is of failure is high. Don't
yeah,
be surprised when this person's going to fail and they're going to screw things up because it's system induced, right?
yes.
We're perfectly built for the outcome that is going to happen. Let's move on a little bit. You mentioned too, like, so one, let's talk about a tool. Uh,
Mhm.
so one of the things you talked about is take five,
Yes.
right? So talk about what does take. A lot of people that listen to this probably know, or in their mind, what take five is. What does take five mean for you?
So the way I write about it in the book is that we need to, so all the practices that are in the book is to take a moment and stop with stuff that are automated within you. So one could be your breathing, another could be your movement. And so this is what mindfulness is very much about. When you take five, you're actually going to your senses. So it might be five things you see, four things you hear, three things you can touch, et cetera, and ending with one thing you can taste. And so I do believe that we can we can use these pauses in ways that, and I hope that I have included enough. I don't want to overwhelm my readers, but I hope I've included enough so that there are different strokes for different folks, right? And so when I started meditating, which is in 1996, I started with transcendental meditation. And I did that sort of a little bit kicking and screaming because it's so damn boring, right? but the results were so extraordinary. But then mindfulness became not popular to the masses, but definitely within some of the communities I was part of in the early 2000s. So when I was a CEO, I introduced mindfulness in 2007, which was very early at the time. It wasn't a word that was very mainstream. And what happens when we practice mindfulness is that we have several different mindfulness exercises to choose from. And my favorite one in the beginning was mindful walking. Like I could do that. And
Mhm.
you just you walk very slowly, and you're just completely present to something that's honestly a little boring and automated, such as your breathing or having a body. We do body scans.
Yep.
And so there are several different things that we can do using our breathing, etc., to calm our systems down. And what I'm really saying is that your sympathetic nervous system is up through the roof when you're stressed out. And what we do with all of these exercises is that we're strengthening the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the natural balance, ebb and flow between doing things and relaxing and doing things and rejuvenating. And so that's where we need to end up.
So let's take this back to the athletic athlete,
Mhm.
right? Lots and lots of studies goes in. I mean, what a pro does now. I mean, you have cryo chambers, you have ice bath, but all of these are physiological things that are they realize like, okay, most pro athletes jump in the ice bath after a physical match or game because it reduces inflammation in your body and your recovery is much quicker, right?
Mhm.
But another one that you mentioned beyond take five was box breathing, or I think you called it something else, four by
Four
four.
by four, just
Yeah,
because, we're
yeah.
in the,
So
yeah.
so some people call it box breathing, but
Mhm, sure.
but really, and another one that came to my mind was like, um, you see the guy that the old-fashioned way of breathing. I have a panic attack, so I'm breathing into a paper bag. It has to be a paper bag, by the way, right?
Right.
But but really, what we're talking about here is the same thing. We are sort of fooling our body, but fooling is not really the right word. But what we're really doing here is
Optimizing.
optimizing the body by taking away all the stuff, but really focusing on box breathing is tell me if I have this right. You inhale for 4 seconds, you hold it for 4 seconds, and then you exhale for 4 seconds. And what it does is it lowers your heart rate.
Yep. It lowers your heart rate, lowers your actually your brain waves. And if you can't remember four by four, maybe you can remember the numbers 4 and 7. What is very, this is not for when you're having a panic attack,
No,
but
no, no, no.
if you're not having a panic attack and you just feel overwhelmed, right? You breathe in for 4 and you breathe out for 7. So the box breathing pinches the breathing because you hold on the up and you hold on the down, right? So 4, 4, 4, 4. And exhaling longer than you inhale does the same thing, which is that it helps your parasympathetic nervous system to activate much quicker.
Yeah.
So it's a great thing to do at any point when you feel overwhelmed.
So the same thing as the ice bath does to the physical body or your muscles, what you're doing now is taking an ice bath may have a good effect for your brain too, but it's mainly there for the physical body, right? But
Yes.
but the question is really, again, go back to action. What do we do? Risk performance is about things that we do. So if we can find ways to reduce stress, like we can't go out, the guy that likes to go fishing, it reduces stress, right? I need to go fishing, I just need to get away, right? But that's a long, so can
Yes.
I mimic the effect that I get if I was a fisherman? I probably need to use this a lot more because I could never go out. I'm not a good golfer. I'm not a good hunter. I'm not a good fisherman because I have monkey brain. I have this monkey that is inside my brain, and I'm out there for 30 minutes, and I'm wondering what I really should be doing, right? But if you can mimic the desired effect of what I would get from sitting in a deer stand for 6 hours, but I
Yeah,
can do it in shorter increments and maybe
you
more
can.
frequent.
Yeah, you can. And I often get the pushback, well, you get the same thing from nature walks. And I said, listen, I work with generals, I work with CEOs, I work with managers, I work with people who don't have time to take nature walks and go fishing. And
Yes.
so what I do in my methods is that I'm finding the absolutely most efficient ways of getting the same neurological and sometimes physiological, but it has a lot to do with how your brain and your psychology can catch up. Because let's remember, it's not just to take the stress down, we also need to increase focus. People are distracted like never before. And the focus part of it, I got to tell you, the so it's not just about, oh, I'm going to download an app and become a little less stressed. These insights about how our physical bodies work, how our brains work, and how all this is actually energy when we scrape behind the surface, underneath the surface, those insights will make it much easier for you to stick to a practice that also increases focus.
Yeah.
And the focus and attention with the program that I do in SAFE can increase as much as 90%.
Yeah.
It's like, because a distracted mind is, of course, a really bad mind. Why? Because there's no such thing as multitasking. You
Yeah.
can't actually be focused on your phone. If you are focused on your phone and then at the same time being focused on a car that's going past my job site really fast, it's impossible. The brain can't do it.
Yeah.
And so there's so much that we can practice into being safer, being more efficient. But here's another big thing. And, of course, Americans and business in general, we want to talk about the bottom line. But there's a big, the relational awareness that I'm talking about in the book. And all of these different things I'm talking about makes for much better collaboration. We have a collaborative brilliance that come out. We have a better flow. That's why there's this false there's a false conflict between being safe and being effective, efficient on the job site, right? It's not true. When you actually work with a human capacity, you're going to get both at the same time. And so much to say, but I think that the focus thing is one of the more important things that we need to get to, because of how extraordinarily much we're going to be benefiting from it. And when we get good at all of this, and back now to relationships, there are some people who come to work just because they like their work buddies. It's actually a social, we spend so much time with our work colleagues, and to not even take into account in your leadership that that is something that needs to have, that conflicts could be resolved, that collaboration can increase. You will see results in your bottom line, but we also have a moral obligation as leaders to make it just a good workplace to come to.
Yeah.
And yeah, of course, you're going to retain more talent and you're going to do better. Again, there are bottom line benefits, but let's also talk about what kind of environment we want to work in, right?
Well, what I like about, so when I read the book, what I really liked was that it was um, after each acronym, it gave steps to okay, how do so you tell me if I got this right, but it was kind of okay, now how do I do the one on flexibility talks about physical flexibility, but also being the mind flexibility, and then it goes into kind of the um, uh, the applicable side. How do I do this?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some of the ones are similar, right? About uh, resting your mind or focusing your mind, and you do talk about going for a nature walk is not a bad thing,
Right.
right? But but if you don't plan these things in. So we know this from a workplace health and wellness and safety standpoint that people just won't do these things automatically. A, because of not A, because they didn't know, B, because they're not in a habit. And then there's competing interests of like, I mean, I used to run every morning and then I got busy and then it got time change and it was dark. And now I realized that it's time changed. I'm almost going back to, the time change for spring forward. And now it's almost fall backwards again, right? Life happens.
Yeah, and
So
excuses keep popping up.
yeah, but if you're an executive or if you're a middle manager, so this is where I think that it goes back to strategy. If you do not build this into your process, if you don't build in, well, okay, how are we going to affect our minds of our workers or our all of our it doesn't matter which level of the organization, you have to build in stress reduction reducers, focus activities, awareness, awareness um, factors or activities that makes you do these, and so you can do that program wise or process wise, right?
Absolutely. And I also work with people who, they might come from law enforcement or they might come from the elite athlete world, but they are really good at safety and they love what I do and they really believe in what I do. And so what happens is that you have these, because I'm a tiny woman, right? So going out with in these macho work sites, I mean, I usually have a lot of fun, but there's also a matter of volume here. But I have these very experienced safety guys who they live and breathe what I teach, and they really buy into my system, and they come out to the work sites. So there are always some safety champions from all teams, right? And they really believe in this, and they would love to go on a safe training, but that's not going to be the entire job site, right? So you have some people come to the actual training, and then they will become ambassadors because what we need is a culture change,
Yeah.
and we need a habit change. And then I have these wonderful people who go out who they have the right profile, and they make sure that these practices and insights they can show them on the work site. And because they are experienced with safety, they do glove programs, they do ladder programs, they do all these different types of very specific to a job site type training, be it in construction or oil and gas or mining, wherever
Yeah.
it might be. So there is that school part of it, when you actually go for a program. And of course, the same thing goes for the executives. The important part is also that there's an app that comes with all of this. And so the program platform can be reached so that you always have is like, I can't take this anymore. I'm totally overwhelmed. I have 10 minutes before I need to be between this job site and the next job site, and I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to regulate my system with the help of Linda and then this program. And so it's we need to be very practical about these things. So we need the insights and we need the practice, and it needs to be easily accessible for everyone and done in a language that also suits most people, because we do speak different languages. And I also think that the language part is also a way to say that managers and leaders need to step up in their game, because there's a big language discrepancy on most high risk work sites,
Yeah.
where some people might not even know English all that well, or even if they were born in America, they might not know English all that well. Whatever it is,
Yeah.
they're all different folks that come to a work site, right? And I think that managers, superintendents, foremen, forepersons, they need to give themselves a bigger credit for how important they are for the culture, how important they are in green lighting certain behaviors, and how they need to be the role models. They can't be the role models if they don't know what they should role model
Yeah.
and what is actually effective. So that's why I want them to learn that.
Yeah.
And a lot of it you can learn from the book.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, and I do think that they are the most important cog in this. They're between the worker where that has the highest risk of getting injured, but they have the biggest impact of that. So elevating their competence and their experience and giving them some tools is really what I think would be good. Let's round this out by talking about, where can you buy the book? So I have the
You have the
PDF
printout.
version, but
You can buy it on Amazon. That's the
okay.
first place it's going to be available. So that's going to be the safest place to go.
Awesome. So look, and you have some other books on there too, on mindfulness, intelligence, and different things. But so what you do is you work with different companies, both at the executive level, but you also do workshops and training middle managers. What's the best way for people to reach you, if they want to get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can learn so much about what we do at the Inner Business Institute at lindabjork.org. So it's just my name,
Yep.
lindabjork.org. And from there, you can be in touch with us. And because of what we're talking about right now, which is the safety
Yep.
part, and we're talking about high risk heavy industries, there is I'm fully aware what a hard sell this is to heavy industry folks. And so that's why I have several steps to get this into an organization, starting with just giving a lecture on the book and why these things are important that are in the book. And then everybody walks away with the book, right? To hey, let's do a workshop for all the safety leaders, safety managers, et cetera. And then we can go into the program. So I actually think the one of the bigger mistakes that heavy industry leadership is doing right now is they are dismissing the workers' need and welcoming of caring for them.
Yep.
The care that they feel when these types of programs are rolled out, you're always going to have some wise ass protesting guys, of
Yeah.
course. But generally speaking, there's been a big shift in the world, and people are more vulnerable. Anxiety and depression are through the roof. And here's a solution where we can get that down 60% without medication.
Yeah.
And so don't discount how ready people are for this, because when you feel that your boss actually gives a damn, you're going to show up and be a better worker.
Yeah. I mean, that's what leadership is all about, right? Whether that is at the executive CEO chair or the frontline lead person, that just got promoted from being the person that holds the wrench, so to speak. Linda, it's been fun to chat about these things. I mean, we get kind of nerdy sometimes talking about I don't expect people are going to flip from Joe Rogan to flipping over to Risk Performance Podcast, but it's a little bit of a limited audience. But for those that are in this risk business, I mean, that's the reason I wanted to talk about this and bring awareness to kind of the mental side of risk performance, and not just talk about you know performance observation and coaching and these type of things. So, if you
It's
want to
a
go to
huge,
Linda Bjork,
yeah,
uh,
sorry.
yeah, lindabjork.com, right, is the website?
No, lindabjork.org.
.org. Sorry.
Listen, in the 90s, some Linda Bjork from Iceland took lindabjork.com, and I was so early. I did my first website in 1994, but she snatched it. I can't believe it. So it's
Well, Linda
lindabjork.org.
Bjork, and Bjork with an O, lindabjork.org, and you can find Linda on LinkedIn, as well, with lots of different areas. Thanks for coming on and chatting about the mindfulness.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a blast.